Good morning, it's Shayna Ackles coming again from Growthward Consulting, and I'm here today with Teagen Tanner. And Teagen is a consultant within our company. Her specialty or superpower is events, operations, organizations. And Teagen, you've held many titles. You've been the interim director of operations for a large expansion organization. Your super passion is events, and you are great at planning events anywhere from 10 people to 400 people live. You've learned over the last year and a half, huge success in online events and how to make them not only successful, but engaging and fun and impactful. And today we're here to talk about a class that you and I wrote together, that you wrote, that I looked at. That's great. And what it really talks about is onboarding agents and what it looks like to bring agents into, whether it be your brokerage, a small team, a large expansion organization, because we've seen you as a director of ops and through our roles and coaching and training, we've seen so many people work so hard to find the greatest people to join their organizations, and they fail at the onboarding process. And it's costly, both financially and emotionally draining.
Yeah, and it's just sad. It's like, why are you spending all this time attracting talent to you to bring them in the door and then just leave them at the lobby, essentially?
Right. Or the alternative to that is, if we're bringing agents into organizations, brand new agents, we know what the retention rate is of those. We know what the natural attrition rate is, because it's a simple business. It's not easy, right? So we've learned painfully with and through others some really great tips in bringing agents into organization or operations, anybody that we're bringing into organization, right? So number one thing, and this is really just, we wrote a big class on this, which we're going to put in the link below on this video so that people can join us as we talk in depth about this. But the number one thing that we want to talk about with people is, what systems do you have in place that protect your profit as you're bringing agents in and out of your organization? Talk to us briefly about that.
Yeah, I think it's really important that you have a system and a timeline that goes with your onboarding, so that you don't put the cart before the wheel, the horse before the cart, I mean. And so, examples of that would be like, you want to make sure that you have set the vision and kind of have their buy-in before you start purchasing things and having expenses attached to that process. Because if you don't have their buy-in and then you go pay for signs, or you spend a bunch of money and then they don't produce and they just leave you, then you're left with a bunch of signs in some city that you're not in anymore.
Right.
So, it can be challenging with providing tools before you get buy-in.
Right. Perfect. I love that one. And then I think number one key is 90-day training program, right? Like, what are you doing for the first 90 days to make sure that they have everything they need to be successful?
Exactly. You want to make sure you have, you can leverage your inside training. There's all kinds of training on the internet, but also you want to make sure that you're giving them things in a sequential order, meaning you're not telling them, hey, go get a listing and go on a listing appointment, when they don't know how to write a contract. I mean, you have to train them to get them to the level that you think is best, and the standard that you have. You want to get them there before you just send them out into the world. So training on lots of things is really important.
Yeah. And I think there's so many things that people don't even think about until, it just shows up. And then we're constantly in this reactive mode, which sets a really poor example. But even bigger than that, like, I think the biggest part of a leader in an organization, if you're still doing the doing, is making sure that you've allocated the time to do the training, right? Because a lot of times we're still in business, and so just having a system, it's really just a system that we follow and that we're planning for. So it's more proactive and not reactive. And the final point, and again, we'll go into depth on all these things, but your standards equal your retention. And I think that goes back to the first thing you talked about, which is, do they understand your vision? Do they understand where they're going? But then your standards, the standards of your team and the standards of those around you.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely standards in place and benchmarks that are important to meet during the onboarding process, so that you know that they're as engaged as you are, and that that you have their buy-in. For instance, making sure that they show up on weekly calls, training calls, or making sure that they submit, their SOI, so you don't have to fight about splits later on whose lead was this and whose was that. Implementing all those things on the front end, having a really strong onboarding process will just make your life so much better in the long run. And what you said too about allocating the time for the training, I think that's really, really important. Oftentimes we go find talent and then we don't have the time to help them succeed. And that's really important. And that's where you can have a lot of fallout, because you set this great big vision, people are excited, they walk in the door the first day and they get a big manual in front of them with some links.
That, right?
Instead of a person who's, hey, welcome to the office, let me show you around, let me, and I think you said something like talk daily, coach weekly, or talk daily, meet weekly. And I think that's something really good that you can do when you're bringing a new person in.
Right. Very minimum.
We will see you all there. And I can't wait to talk about more proactive onboarding.
Awesome. Thanks, Teagen.
Thank you.